Thanks, George. Appreciate that. Okay, today is what is it, March 13th, 14th, Monday. March 14th, the time is 7:10. We lack a full quorum, but we have an ex officio member, Michael Burke, so we can proceed with the hearing. And what's scheduled for tonight is approval or disapproval of the request for tax breaks for 3300 Palmer Avenue. Do we have a representative from Palmer Avenue?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to do, when you're telling us all about why you need the tax breaks, I would like to know what you do with what you provided to the community when you had the 421A tax breaks.
Raisy, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So the project itself was actually developed by another developer, McQuestion Development, in around 1990, 2000. I know a fair amount about it because I was in the government and actually lent McQuestion, not personally, but through the agency that I ran, lent her the money to develop the project back then. So the project provides 135 units of rental housing. There are income limits, okay, on the project, okay, based upon what was standard 20 years ago. So the income limits depend upon the size of the household. So for a three-person household, it's 7 times the rent. If I'm sorry, 1 or 2-person household, it's 7 times the rent. For 3 or more, it's 8 times the rent. So if you're familiar with the Mitchell-Lama program, those are income limits that were part of the original Mitchell-Lama program. They're a little bit lower than that now. And there's a maximum income, which isn't really relevant, of 250% of the area median income. So it's a rental housing project that was designed for middle-income people, moderate middle-income people, and that's who it serves. You know, the original owner sold the property to the current owners in 2016, but the regulatory agreement that governs the property is still in effect until about 2026, another 3 to 4 years. So the owner would be obligated under the financing and the tax exemption, as long as the tax exemption is in effect, which is, as I said, until 2025-26, the current tax exemption, to rent the units in accordance with the regulatory agreement on the property. After 2026, the owner is not required to rent any vacancy. You know, they can rent the units to anybody, regardless of their income, at whatever rent they want upon vacancy. So upon a vacancy, they can raise the rent to the market. And the reason why we're asking for a new tax exemption is that unless they raise the rents by $400, $500, $600 a month, they won't be able to pay the taxes when the 421A tax exemption expires. So.
Okay, what did I just have a question, because under the 421A plan, the builders were supposed to give something back to the community. Can you tell me what it was?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but again, what they gave is that they're restricting the incomes, and the rents are restricted to rent stabilization. So in exchange for the tax exemption, they entered into and the preferential financing, which they've paid off. Okay, they no longer have government financing on the property, but in exchange for that, they entered the property into rent stabilization, And as I said, the regulatory agreement governing the income limits, though, still exists until the tax exemption, the 421A exemption, expires. So that's what they gave to the community, was an affordable rental housing project.
Okay, I just want to ask you, when the 421A expires, you can't raise anybody's rent that is living in the building at the time, only a new tenant, and you're restricted to the percentage that you can raise it. Am I correct?
For the existing tenants, they're actually in the last 4 years of the exemption, which they're in now. They can raise the rents by an additional 2.2% a year during this period, in addition to whatever the rent guidelines board would approve. So, but yes, the existing tenants are would be protected even after the 421A expires. They would be protected by rent stabilization. That's correct.
Okay. I thank you. You have anything else you'd like to say?
No, not really. Again, just that when the units turn over, they would no longer be affordable to people in the community, probably. They'd have to most of the
Okay.
people.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions for anybody from the Land Use Committee? Any questions? Do we have anybody?
Well, I had my hand up, but I wasn't recognized by the vice chair, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So, so I'm going to ask this question, Mr. Brad. So again, Mr. Stricker asked a question, a very specific question as to what because in essence, you're asking us to give you $35 million, right? And to take out of the councilman's coffers. That's what you're asking us to do. So Mr. Stricker asked you a very strict question, which I never really heard a definitive answer for outside of, well, we're keeping the rents low. The question was, under the 421A plan, what did you give back to the community? That was the question, and you really didn't answer it. So I'm going to ask you that question again, please.
I'm sorry you didn't find my answer to be what you were looking for, but the 421A is just a tax exemption program that was designed to stimulate the construction of rental housing. It's not, that's what the community got. It's not a program where they had to, I don't know what else you were looking for that the community was supposed to have gotten as a result of the tax exemption, Dr. Burke. But that's all it was designed to do, and that's what it did. So,
I mean, I understand that. I'm just trying to get an answer from Mr. Stricker's question, because again, the 421A program, as a number of us noted, the owner, which seems like a nice guy, the councilman wanted our recommendation, and so that's what and you're kind of lucky because I put it on the general board agenda, but through certain circumstance we hadn't had a chance to vote on it until now. But so this is really a recommendation to the councilman, because pretty much I kind of sort of know where he's going to go, but again, he wants to hear from us. To that end, your 421A, your current client and the previous person prior to your current client owning the building pays less in taxes than what some members of the community board and the community does. And for me, that's problematic. And for me, I mean, I've heard, this is your third time coming before us, which I guess is due to the fact that you want to vote. You came in December and you came in January, and you stated the reasons why you needed the 11A exemption. And and to that end, our district manager got a term sheet. Finally, HPD responded after him badgering them for months. They finally responded. I want to say either early this month or late last month. And again, reading the term sheet, to me, this is just my opinion. This is not in any way, shape, or form and then trying to influence the committee. But you're, again, $35 million is a lot of money. And again, if anybody needs any background, just go back to those prior meetings. It's on our YouTube channel, but that's kind of sort of a tough pill to swallow. I understand that HPD wants us to give you the tax break, but again, that's taking money out of. I look at right now, not Congressman, Councilman Riley is doing quite a bit in the community as far as trying to, and not only empower us, but giving funds towards the community as a whole to make where we live better. And taking $35 million out, quite frankly, is too steep for me. Additionally, our district manager calls you, which to your credit, I know that you're supposedly cleaning the place up, but our district manager called you guys out back in December, which stating how filthy the property was. And again, I know that you've made strides towards that, but the reason that you did that is because the district manager called you out. So again, that's just where I stand, but I'm just, one person with one vote. So, I yield back.
Can I just say one thing, Dr. Burke? First of all,
Sure.
and two things really. First, the owner is trying to be responsive to the community board and recognized when that they could have done better, and they have done better, I think, in that regard. It's, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. The other thing I wanted to just to say is that how much this property pays in property taxes does, and I don't know if Ted wants to chime in, but there's no correlation between how much this property pays in property taxes and how much money Council Member Riley gets to spend in Community Board 12. So that's just, it may seem like that might be the case, but that's simply not the case. Every council member gets the same amount of money to spend in his district, whether you're in Midtown Manhattan, where the office building's paying, gazillion dollars in property taxes, or you're in a low income or middle income neighborhood where the property taxes are lower. So there is just no correlation between the two. So if this property tax exemption were to be approved, it wouldn't be taking any money out of this community.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Brass. Again, and before Mr. Weinstein jumps in, again, this is for me. I'm speaking for me. It's a tough pill to swallow. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I would have to do a little bit more homework to see if what you're saying is a true statement or not. But, to your client's credit, yes, they did, once our district manager called them out, yes, they did make steps towards improvement. But again, only thing that we're doing is we're going to make a recommendation, because ultimately whatever Councilman Rowley decides is what's going to happen anyway. So even if we say yes, he may decide to say no. If we say no, he may say yes. So again, it's just a recommendation. That's all this is.
Go ahead, Ted. You have your hand raised.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Ted Weinstein. I'm Director of Bronx Planning for HPD. I actually came to the meeting tonight not planning on really saying anything, because I had believed that based on prior discussions and on an email, a long email that was a response to a even longer email of questions that had been sent by your district manager on behalf of the board, asking a lot of questions about tax incentive programs and these programs in particular. One of the things I did say at a previous meeting was that tax incentives as a way of exactly what an incentive is. It's something that helps to get people to do something that maybe they might not do otherwise. And using tax incentives as a way of building housing, and particularly affordable housing, has been common for literally 100 years. I think I said last time that many of the buildings in the Bronx, what we call the pre-war buildings, pre-World War II, that were built in the 1920s and 30s, were built with tax incentive programs that were created by the city or the state in the 1920s. And they have been tax incentive programs, and they change time to time, depending on what's needed and what the market is. But it's a very common, in fact, it's probably one of the most common tools that are used all over the country as a way of building housing, much more so even than an actual construction subsidy. And so what's happened here and what is being asked is not at all unusual. It's very, very common. The other thing is just to be sure that no one misunderstands. If I'm understanding the concern correctly, that if this development was to lose the tax benefit, and if it is in fact 35 million, I'm not even sure about that. But if it was that amount, it's not like that money is going to Councilman Riley. It's not like it's going to, for the benefit of Community Board District 12. It would be going into the general fund of the city of New York. And it might be used for all kinds of good reasons, but there's no reason to think that it would in any way specifically directly be used in your district. I'm a little even surprised that these comments are being raised again, because I thought we had discussed them. And then again, in mid-February, our intergovernmental unit, having worked with our tax incentive staff, did send, I guess, like a 2-page letter answering a number of the questions that were asked, and they were valid questions, and that's fine. And they explained a lot of the things about tax incentives programs, about 421A, about Article 11. And so I just don't want people to be to misunderstand. Now, if one complains that the taxes that this development pays are less than many homeowners, that's unfortunate. But then maybe take that up with your state legislators, as well as your council members. But that's just the fact of the legislation and what it allows. I don't doubt for a second that there are many other buildings in your area that are using or have used 421A tax benefits as well. And there'll be more, because again, it is a very common tool that is used. Now, if people in your community and on the board were upset about the conditions at the building, and particularly around the building, rightfully so. We when that was brought to our attention through this board, I spoke to our intergovernmental people about that. They spoke to our tax incentive people about that. They communicated with the development team and the representatives that they have to clean up. And from what I saw some photos this morning. It looks like they did quite a job. Were they doing the job as well as they should have been before? Obviously not. But they have improved, and I'm sure they're committing to do that and to continue to do that, to keep that area cleaned up. The difficult area to keep clean, but that's their problem. They have a responsibility to do that, and they've been told that. But that by itself is not a reason to risk losing the availability of these units to moderate income people. And again, if anybody believes that denying this, that asking your councilman to deny this new tax exemption to this development is going to produce more benefits to the residents of District 12, that's just not so. It's not going to happen. It just doesn't work that way. And so again, I'm here more just to help, correct any misunderstandings that there might be about how these things work. I'm not a tax incentive staff person. I can't begin to explain in detail like how these things work. Mr. Brass, who's a financial consultant for the team, knows this much better than I do. But again, the HPD did provide a letter explaining a lot about the tax incentive programs. But again, the bottom line is, and I don't want to keep going, but the bottom line here is that there really is no correlation at all between the tax benefits that this development has and would have, there's no correlation between that and improvements within Bronx Community District 12.
Thank you, Ted. There's some questions in the chat from Mildred and from Keisha, which I will get to. I do want my board members to understand, because to Ted's point, this is now a couple of times that there's been misinformation by board members. Again, I don't know if it's done purposely or just they don't understand it the way some of us do. One of the things that was said earlier, and I don't think anybody spoke to it, I mean, you did speak to it by saying there is no benefit to the 421A tax credit other than it's a tax credit or an incentive that's used for affordability, right? You can answer that, Chuck or Ted. It's up to you.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
So
for,
the idea,
it's to stimulate the housing itself and to keep it affordable, yes.
okay, so there is no additional
Yeah,
requirement
they didn't
that
have
there
to
has to
provide a
be.
park or
Yeah,
anything, you know.
there's nothing of that. So I want my board members that are going to vote on this to understand that the 421A tax credit exists for any developer in the city of New York. It doesn't require city council a vote. It doesn't even require anything from the community board, to tell you the truth. It's an incentive that's available to any developer that wants to build. This Article 11 does require a city council vote. The only reason that we're listening to this is because Councilmember Kevin Riley asked us to get involved because he wanted to hear what our opinion of it was. So that's why they've come to the board. That's why we've had a number of questions. HPD, we sent an email. HPD responded. I sent it to all the board members, so you should have received it. You could have read it, and the people have answered it. The second issue that I want to raise is this is, like Ted said also, you know, our chairman has raised this a couple of times. How much is the tax incentive for cumulative? Because he keeps referring to 35 million, and how long is it for? Just so that we get a sense of what it is, because it's not $35 million per year. That's misinformation. How much is it for, and how long is it for?
Well, when the 421A exemption expires in 2025, based on the current assessed value of the property and the current tax rate, I mean, those things change every year. They went down. The assessed value of the property went down last year in the pandemic. It looks like it's going to go up a little bit starting July 1st of next year. The taxes would be, you know, in the neighborhood of $800,000 to $900,000 a year. Based on the exemption that HPD's offered us, and actually they redid their numbers and they came back with, we didn't really necessarily ask them for it, but they determined that the exemption should be about 1.5% of the rent roll, which would be about $45,000 to $50,000 a year. So the owner would be saving in the first year about $800,000 a year approximately in taxes. For $850,000 for 40. The exemption would last 40 years. The taxes would go up as the rent roll goes up. It's a percentage of the rent roll. So if 20 years from now, through rent stabilized increases, the rent roll doubled, the amount of taxes the owner would pay would double. How much he'll save, it's hard to say what the assessed value of the property would be 20 years from now. But why don't we say approximately $800,000 a year for 40 years would be the approximate savings to the owner.
Okay, so 800,000 a year
For 40 years,
for
maybe a
40
little bit
years.
more. So over
That's-
40 years, it would cost 32 to 35
Yeah.
million dollars, but not,
Okay.
as you said, George, it's not $35 million in 1 year. It's an annual savings. Okay.
Okay.
For the for the record, Mr. Bress, I never said it was 35 million over 1 year. I used the same numbers that
I'm
you
just,
did. So I
I'm
just want to say that for the record. So
Okay.
that I never said it was for 1 year. That was cumulative over a 40-year term.
Right,
So
correct. So we're all,
initially I said I gave a wrong number. I said 40 million, and then Mr. Carl Lanzano corrected me, and that was back in the December 2021 land use meeting. So let's get the record straight. I never said it was $35 million for 1 year. So
no, I understand. I was just,
okay, no, I'm
George,
not saying you
George
said
had said
that. I'm
that,
just
so I
I'm
was
just I'm just setting the record straight. That's all I'm doing.
okay.
Thank you.
We have some questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mildred Sinceros asked, do you have lots of tenants that owe back rent?
That would be Razy or Ari if you're on the phone. I don't.
We definitely do. There's a gross estimate would be, I want to say $500,000, maybe more.
Do you know how many tenants you currently have? If I recall, 135 units.
Yes, sir.
How many? What would the percentage be of those units that owe back rent?
About, I want to say about 20%. Some of them are 2 months behind, but there's a handful of tenants that haven't paid $1 since COVID began, just taking advantage of, or for whatever reason, they didn't even apply for help that was available. But so there isn't a straight answer, because some people could just be 2 months behind, and like I said, there's definitely tenants that have. There's a single tenant that probably has a balance of over $60,000. So give or take 20%.
Okay. Keisha Martin had a question. It says, please run through the total number of units and the number that are rent stabilized / affordable, please.
All of them.
All of the units are rent stabilized now, and as I said, they will continue to be rent stabilized for 40 years if the tax exemption is approved. All of them. They'll have income limits that are actually immediately for vacancies. The income limits will be much stricter than they are now. So they'll still be affordable to moderate and middle income people, but like for now, as of now, for example, someone could make $150,000, $160,000 a year to rent an apartment. It would go down to, the maximum would go down to, and that would be any apartment could be rented to someone making that much money. Now, if the tax exemption is approved, there'll be different levels of affordability. Most of the units will be affordable to people earning less than 80% of the area median income, which is, about $85,000, $90,000. That'll be the maximum, but there'll be some units that could be rented to people about 120% of the area median income. So $120,000 a year for a family of 4. But they'll all continue to be rent stabilized and subject to the rent guidelines board immediately. Actually, the owner won't be able to take advantage of this 2.2% increase that we mentioned that's allowable under 421A. So as soon as the agreement would come into effect, they would be limited to just whatever the rent guidelines board approved for an increase.
So you spoke to this earlier. You said that if you don't get the tax credit, not only are you subject to whatever the rent guidelines board does, which may be 1 or 2% over 1 or 2 years, the landlord could charge, was it up to 6% or an additional 4%, you said?
No, it's 2.2% a year for
Okay.
for the next 4 years over and above what rent guidelines board approves. The concept behind there is that back then the legislature knew that the taxes would be increasing, so they allowed the owner to, as the exemption phased out, they allowed the owner to get a small increase over and above what rent stabilization approves, so that they would better be able to pay the full taxes when the exemption fully expired.
We have a question, a hand raised from Keisha, but I'm not really good with numbers. So if you can tell us, for example, what someone who's in a 2-bedroom currently paying and what a rent guidelines board increase plus 2% or 2.4% increase would look like for that tenant.
Well, the rents vary depending, if you had an original tenant who never moved and there was never a vacancy allowance, they have a lower rent than the same 2-bedroom apartment where that's turned over and when vacancy allowances were allowed prior to 2016. But the average rent, 2-bedroom apartment, it rents for about somewhere between $1,700 and $1,800 a month now, some a little bit more, some a little bit less. So 2.2% would be about $40 a month on top of whatever the rent guidelines board approves.
And then that would be every year, though.
Every year for the next 4 years. And then, as I said, the existing tenants then would still be covered by rent stabilization, but then when the unit became vacant, the owner would be able to raise the rent to market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keisha, your question?
Yeah, so my question wasn't really answered. So what I'm looking for is the number of total units, and then if you could break that down by number of 1, number of 2, number of 3, just so I have a sense of, how many people would be affected by this.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have it right in front of me, but only about 8 of the most of the apartments are 2 and 3 bedrooms. Only about 8 of them, I believe, Ari, are one bedroom
8.
apartments.
Can you guys hear me? 8 are 1 bedrooms, 82 are 2 bedrooms, and 44 are 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, so it's a building for families, primarily, not it's not single people, it's a family.
Okay,
building.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I do
You
have a
see-
question. I'm sorry, Carl.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the issues that came up, and I spoke to the councilman's office in regards to this too, so they may have already asked you. I didn't realize Bowler Avenue was an unfinished street on your side of the block. Is that something that you would consider doing, or is that an ask already made from the organization? Oh.
Is she still here?
Yes, yes. So, I'd have to obviously speak with ownership, but it's definitely something we're open to doing. It's something that would bring a lot of value to the residents and the community. That area, because of the way it's unfinished, we had the dumping issue, which we've been able to resolve with cameras and live monitoring. But the rainwater pools there in a way that really makes it very disruptive to the residents. And it's definitely something that we've begun looking into.
So there's not been an official ask then?
Correct. We have not began the paperwork. We just started to get information on the process.
Okay.
I will tell you, that would be a great benefit to the community as well as the owners of the buildings, because you line up with less dumping, and also standing water creates mosquitoes. And, they'll be a lot healthier if that street can be completed. I think you really should look into doing it. I don't believe it'll be that expensive, but then again, you don't know what the going rate for construction of a street is, but it would definitely benefit 3300 Palmer and the whole community if you did that.
Yes, we're on the same page. The residents would also be able to, walk around more easily, and it would be very beneficial, like you said, from a number of angles.
So can we get any type of commitment from you guys that you'll look into doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak with ownership tomorrow and get you an email by the end of the week about this.
I would ask you to do that, please. And also, once you let us know you want to do it, we'll help you with DOT getting it done, because DOT has to approve it. since it is a city street. Am I correct, George?
Yeah, they play a part.
Yes, okay. So I would ask you, please look into that. That's really important. I'll tell you, my main concern is the mosquitoes, because with Nile virus and all these other stuff that's flying around, you don't want the people in the area, including Co-op City, which is to the south of them, infected by mosquitoes.
Sure.
I don't want to see George get bit.
Sure. So like I say, I'll definitely, talk with ownership this week, and we'll get you an email with an update.
Okay. George, do we have anybody else?
I don't have any more questions in the chat, but board members, this is your opportunity. We don't want to wait till the board meeting to start asking more questions.
Yeah, because this is it, because we'll come back with the recommendation to the board, and there will be no questions.
Yeah. Carl, one of the things that you can do, just like we do on our ULURP applications, you can make the approval conditioned on the filing of the BPP for the sidewalk and half the street.
Well, something, you read my mind, because that's what I was going to do.
All right.
Thank you, George, for supporting me on that. Because I'm.
You're welcome.
So if there's no further questions in the chat or from any board member who's sitting, any land use committee member sitting in this meeting, we can take a vote. And does anybody have any recommendations what the vote should be? I have my own idea. I'll let you know what it is. If we get a second, then we'll do it. We will approve the tax exemption if Boulder Avenue is completely refurnished with sidewalk and their side of the street is fixed.
Keisha, you had your hand up?
I did. So I just want to circle back to the trash issue. So I took a ride by, maybe it was, I don't know, last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And while the trash was all, confined to one area, they are in bags. And I'm wondering if dumpsters could also be a recommendation. This way the trash is contained and covered to, avoid any rat issues. I don't know if there are any in the area, but I know that Assemblyman Dinowitz had sent out a rat university program. And so clearly it's becoming an issue in the Bronx. So if we could make, some sort of recommendation about trash, that might be helpful as well. I don't know if we can do that, but I think that would be helpful.
I think we have to go through sanitation for that, since they're the ones responsible for picking up the garbage there. And I don't think District 12 has any trucks that can pick up dumpsters.
Can you see? I'm sharing the pictures now.
I can see that. Yeah.
Okay. This is the email that they were referring. They sent this today. So you can see. That's actually an important point. Maybe they don't have to put dumpsters. Maybe they can just containerize it within their own property. Is that something doable, Razy, or anybody from your team?
So let me, if I may, this area, what we call the garbage area, this is what we use to accumulate the recycling, which is bottles and cardboards. The actual trash, we have compactor rooms that are enclosed inside the building. There isn't any regular trash in this area, like household, which would, be feed on, rats or what have it. It's pretty much used for, like I said, recycling, maybe construction debris. The actual household trash is, like I mentioned, we have 2 compactor rooms and 1 interior storage room, which is all concrete structure within the building.
I will say that they were recyclables that I did see that day. So that's good to hear.
Yeah,
They were like
and
the
you
white,
put
the clear and blue bags.
Yeah,
They're
and
bulkier storage, so, takes more space, so we just have them out in that space.
and the black bags you put out the night before to pick up is scheduled, correct?
Yes, sir.
Which is the trash bags.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So again, if there's no further questions, I'll repeat my recommendation, asking for a second. I recommend that we approve the tax incentive for the developer if the street is fully reconstructed to the guidelines of the city of New York and the sidewalks put in.
I'll second that motion.
Oh, okay, I was just going to do that.
Okay, can we get a vote? Secretary, call the board members, the land use members.
If you don't have it, I could call the names, Judith.
Yeah, please, George, please do that for me. Thank you.
All right, hold on. I'm going to do it based on the list that I have here. So, Carl, you're first. You're the chairman.
Yes.
Harry Singh.
Yes.
Judith Benitez.
Aye.
Carla Basati.
Aye.
John is not here, right? John Isaac? No. All right. Carl Lanzano? No. Anthony Reed? No. Miss Keisha Lago Martin?
Aye.
Sydney Blair is here? And Denise Bond?
Aye.
All right. I think it carries.
Okay. So be it.
Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
So
Thank you for saying a few things out, because I tell you the truth, I just want to give you a heads up. I was never in favor of the 421A program.
Yeah, well, you and a lot of other people, the legislature may not renew it, so you won't have to worry. You may not have to worry about it after June when it expires.
No, and I'll tell you why, because I sat on the MTCCC who approves all the construction projects. They have a new name now since I retired. But I used to sit there every Monday going over new building construction. And it was incredible what the developers who came in looking for 421As said they would do, and they didn't do it after they built the building. So I've never been a fan of it. But
All
you
right,
seem to be trying, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you, everyone. If there's nothing else, we'll be ending the meeting.
What?
Time? Go ahead.
All right.
Okay. Can I have a motion to end the meeting at 7:53?
I second the.
Motion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, everybody have a blessed evening.
You too.
All right.
Take
Good
care.
night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Good night.